Hi, buenos dias.
Glad you're with us. I'm pulling up so I can see your comments here. We'd rather use our other camera, but the company that runs the camera, they got issues, blah, blah, blah. So Kelly is faithfully holding her phone up. Kelly, we love you.
Oh, thanks,
You're amazing,
guys.
Kelly.
So today on Overtime, we just want to spend a quick minute. We want to talk about grief with you, but we want to tell you just kind of the behind the scenes of today's show. If you were listening, Fridays, it sounds lazy, but we don't plan the show on Friday.
Yeah, we don't.
It's Follow-Up Friday, where we truly try to yield once a week to exactly what God would want us to cover. We have a lot of ideas. We had a list of things we didn't get to that we wanted to discuss today.
We did.
But we want the follow-up to be about you. Hey, what's up, Mike? Callie, hello. She likes your shirt, by the way.
Gracias.
What, my chopped liver over here, Callie?
She doesn't,
you don't like my
she
shirt?
doesn't like your shirt. Oh, my God.
Deborah, hey, what's up? Katrina loved the show. Thank you so much. Yeah, we did too, honestly. It had nothing to do with us. Here's the story God writes. We didn't plan on talking about grief at all today.
No, we didn't.
One of the topics we wanted to bring back was
optimism.
to talk about toxic positivity, right?
That's what it was, positivity.
And then the Lord had other plans. And so we went for an hour and 45 minutes on grief, and I heard some of the more powerful testimonies I've ever heard. This only happens when you let go.
Yeah.
We couldn't have planned for those kind of stories, like Erwin's story.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
Rachel shared in Westlake, shared a very powerful testimony on how she dealt with grief, and even the lessons when you sit in grief and just sit there.
And I think you did some growing in that, and I want to get to that in a minute too, because I grew in today's discussion too. But to be totally honest, the Laura Story interview that we did at the very end was scheduled and on there, and I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here going, okay, God, clearly you want us to interview Laura Story. I see it coming for like half an hour. We're talking about grief. How do I shift gears and go, hey, so you wrote a new song, a new book. What's going on? Like, how do you do that? And then as we get close to it, I realize, oh my goodness, the Lord orchestrated
even
this.
Her song was like perfect.
Yeah. God orchestrated that interview where we had planned to have her there, but I didn't know how God was going to use her. And then all of a sudden it's clear that her whole thing is about grief and surrender.
And it's powerful because this isn't just a show. I mean, it sounds like entertainment, but obviously the Lord is behind all of this, and it's a ministry. And there were so many calls and texts of people really going through it like now. And so I was very encouraged to see how he used Laura's story, even though it wasn't planned by us, but it was planned by him.
He used Laura Story's story?
Yeah.
No.
Used her story to minister to our listeners.
I think it was, Gary just said it was God's timing for the subject of grief. Amen. I mean, God knows that there's stories we're not going to hear about from people today that met them exactly where they were, which is why it's a little scary, to be honest with you, to do a show with no specific plan. Okay, no, we're planning. We have things to talk about.
But we're
we let go.
Open to the Holy Spirit.
We are every day, but more so on Fridays.
More on Fridays, because as you review, it's kind of like, man, what did the Lord do through these stories? What did it do in you? So yeah, it's a lot more organic on Fridays.
And somebody, Yvonne said that she likes it way better when it's up close and personal like this. Oh, do you?
Hola.
Hi.
I got as weird as you get.
Wow.
That is
How
so
did you do
weird.
that? Yeah, okay. Now, what did you learn about grief today?
What touched me the most and what I was open to more was that I knew grief looks different in everyone. Everybody goes through it differently, but being mindful of it as you engage people and realizing not everybody needs ministry in the same way while they grieve, and being open, more importantly, to the Holy Spirit in terms of how do you minister to someone in grief. Being mindful of, don't use my words, use the Lord's words, and what do they need.
And I'd say one of the things I picked up on was you were emphasizing the idea that you can be stuck in grief.
Yeah.
And I was on the side trying to go, but don't push me out.
Yeah.
But Chad Allen came, and another God thing. We didn't plan on having Chad Allen on the show.
He's like one of my favorite pastors of all time.
Local pastor happened to be listening to the conversation, was texting me privately on my phone, and I said, dude, you got to come on the show. We didn't plan on that. Chad comes in, drops some wisdom, and he essentially was agreeing with you, saying, yes, it is possible to be stuck in grief. but it's not possible to create a definition of
Yes.
knowing exactly what that looks like.
Yeah.
And that for one person it might look like this, and another it could be totally different.
Yeah. And there's no strict time frame in terms of when are you stuck, when do you know you're stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever, would you ever say you were stuck in grief when your dad passed?
If you remember, Chad highlighted the difference on when a person's been sick for a long time and then dies. I had a friend of the family.
Twice,
a friend of the family, David Williams, right after my dad died. And actually, he did his funeral, which I just love David. And he's an evangelist at heart. And my father's side of the family was there, his brothers. They needed David Williams. It was just, he's amazing. So he did my father's funeral. Next month, he lost his own mom. But his own mom had a stroke. And just the difference in grief, depending. So my point is, when I was grieving my dad, it was grieving for months, for like 8-9 months, knowing it was coming, not knowing when, even going through the guilt of praying toward the end that the Lord would take him, and that guilt you feel. But it's like, it's either take him or you see the continuing suffering. So I felt stuck mentally, and I asked my mom, oh my gosh, it's gonna, I felt like it was gonna stay this way. And that's where she ministered to me and said, remember Rachel said when she lost her daughter, somebody else had lost their child and ministered to her, and she was open to what they said. To hear my mom share her experience in losing her dad and telling me it gets better, you're gonna be okay. I needed that. I needed to know, okay, there's stages. I won't be in this deep sorrow and despair. It felt like it was just going to be forever.
And it sounds like you were spiritually, emotionally ready to start getting out of it.
I needed to.
Yeah, you're ready.
I needed to, yeah. Because I had my first daughter a month after my dad died. The kids, life goes on. That's where I think you feel the isolation that Pastor Chad mentioned. While you're grieving, life goes on and the demands of life. So I know that people stay in it longer, but I needed to know, oh my goodness, I'm going to be able to take the next step and, the next day and just, move on.
By the way, Betty is saying, please tell me this is going to be available on a podcast. Our son has been grieving over 3 years. Would love this for him. So sorry to hear your son's going through that. Yeah. We will tell the powers that be that you put that request in for the podcast. It may not be in the next month or so, but we can certainly work on pulling that audio, and I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
It's just a weird moment for us because, again, we did not plan on this at all. We didn't plan for Chad Allen to be part of it. We didn't plan for the stories that came in. We didn't plan to talk about it that long, and we had no idea Laura's story would be God's perfect capstone on a discussion. So God wrote today's show. We had a number of comments coming in here. Callie is saying, she said, when I lost my grandpa 3 years ago due to cancer, I had such a horrible time dealing with his death. I pushed everyone away. But I have learned how to open up and express how I feel to my husband. Told my husband that I just need him to be there emotionally and physically for me. Just need a hug or kiss, depending on how I feel, and to feel a little better. I'm still not over his passing and miss every day. Yeah, and that's her own unique way of going through that grieving. And yes. I like that she told her husband what she needed, though.
Yes.
Sometimes people want to help and they don't know how, and then so they try things, and that's not what you need.
And they hurt you unintentionally.
Right.
Yes.
So why not tell them what you need?
I appreciated when I was going through my dad's thing that I was able to say out loud, which is something you probably would never say. I need this to end, to my husband, and feel safe, because I knew I need this to end meant he's gonna pass, And to not feel judged by Lynn, I feel uncomfortable even saying it. But if you've been through it, you know what I'm saying. But I felt safe telling him that without feeling, what? Why would you say that about your dad? So I think, thank you, Callie, about just making sure sometimes you do need to say out loud, yo, can you just listen to me?
Yeah, here's how I'm grieving. Please help me with that.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting, too, Sheila's throwing in here, saying, what about people who are grieving about lost relationships? How should someone move on from that? Deborah rightly pointed out, yes, divorce is a death.
And
a relationship is grieving. Grieving is not just tied to death. I mean, Sarah and I have, oddly enough, grieved transitions.
Yeah.
You grieve when you have your first child, the loss of the life that was before. You're not mad you had a kid. You don't dislike your child. But you grieve the togetherness you had with your spouse before that.
Yeah.
You grieve when you transition to a new phase with parenting.
Yeah.
Sarah and I grieve when we moved twice to 2 different states. You grieve. It was good change, but it's still worthy of grieving.
And when we know that, we can listen differently. I grieved. This is gonna sound weird.
Oh, good.
But
I like when you sound weird.
I grieved being married, because I got married early and I was still in college, and everybody around me was just a student living on campus,
doing their thing. And,
yeah. So my point is, whatever it is that, like, if we understand this and validate it, like you said, it would be harder. Hopefully, you wouldn't dismiss people. Like, if you told somebody, "Man, I'm really struggling. I had my first baby. I'm celebrating," but like, I think if you haven't been through it, people can dismiss your feelings and be like, "What are you talking about?" Even divorce. I had a very close friend that I still love experienced divorce, and in it, she said that, and it was years ago. She was like, "Oh my gosh, it's like a death." You know, you can easily dismiss that and be like, "Are you serious? Like death?" So we have to be mindful so that we listen differently and appreciate people's feelings.
Well, and at the same time, it's important we build Christian community so that we can have that safe place to say that. Because I know it sounds weird, but it's not a weird thing. Because when you grieve...
To grieve being married?
Yeah, because there's a death of your single life.
Yes. Like when somebody said Mrs. Neville's for the first time, I looked around and looked for Lynn's mom. I'm like, "What are you doing?" Mrs. Neville's, but I was like 21. And I felt like, oh my gosh. Yeah, so I'm glad you said it's not weird.
No, I don't think it's weird at all, because it's a different type of grief. You're not mad at Len. You don't dislike being with him.
Yeah.
But you're saying, my single life was great. Yeah. And I see other people living that freedom and independence, and I miss that. It's okay. Janet said something super sweet, so I can't resist saying it. She said, "I try to reserve the word awesome only when referring to God, and this morning's show was truly awesome."
Oh, Janet. Cinco.
Stop, but don't.
I just gave you 5, Janet.
Words of encouragement are my love language, so I'm grateful that you said that.
Oh, yeah. Many women do grieve when their children go into kindergarten. I am grieving.
Yes.
My baby went to kindergarten. It's not a grief as much because she's homeschooled, but her stages are grieving for me because she's like the last baby. And she tries to help me, like she's losing her teeth. And I'm like, "Nia, no, stop." And she's like, "Mom, I'm still 5. She helps me, but
she's also no longer the cuddle baby.
Oh, and then anything. When she turns double digits, that's going to be a grief. When she gets married, oh my Lord, I can't even go there. So yeah, that's definitely a grief.
Yeah, and we can't dismiss that.
You're grieving. You just had a kid.
Sure.
As a dad, because...
We just had one kid start high school and one kid start kindergarten. And that meant also in doing that all of our children were now in school. And that's 3 kinds of grief. It's the, how can I possibly be old enough to have a kid in high school?
I know.
And I'm not that old, and so I'm like kicking and screaming, grieving on that one. My baby going into kindergarten, that's like...
It's not cool.
It's like, I'm happy for him to move on to that phase of life, but our sweet little boy he's growing up. And then, like... There is a grief, although a tremendous amount of joy, and that life transition of people, of the kids going into school. Like, I'm grateful for the freedom that gives me and the breathing room I need, and the Lord knows I need it in my life right now. But that means our babies are all grown up. There's grief in that.
Wendy says, "I can empathize with so many. Lost my mom twice. Oh, I feel you. Alzheimer's is a double loss.
It's double loss, yeah.
My older brother and sister and I grieve my daughter's ongoing addiction." That came up today, which actually brings up our podcast that drops at 10 a.m. It's with Roy from Galvanize, very dear friend of the ministry who ministers to those in recovery. But yes, that is definitely a grief. It came up during the show. It's like an ongoing grief, right?
Yeah. It was a dad who said his son is in the midst of an addiction, and it's like watching him slowly commit suicide.
Oh,
and
yes.
When I heard that, I was like, wow, that's so true. And so he's grieving potentially twice, depending on whether recovery actually does come.
Michelle says, "I went through such depression and grief back in 2010. My mom died at 62 of cancer. My dad, 63, died of cancer 9 months later.
Oh.
And then 4 years later, went through divorce. So I went through so many stages of grief. Praise God, he got me through it. But there is no set way to grieve." That's what we learned today. Getting through it is hard, but lean on God through it all.
Sorry, how about Sarah, what she said? She said, we are grieving leaving our eldest son in college in the U.S. We miss him even though he's just a WhatsApp call away. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's certainly a grief.
Yeah.
Katrina asked, grief can be happy too, yes?
That's weird, the way that sounds. But yeah, we're talking about
It can be.
You're celebrating, oh, you're finally in kindergarten. Yeah.
But even in a sideways way, grief over death can be happy. Here's what I mean. My grandmother, in her later years, I could hardly go visit her. My mom was watching this, I think. My oldest daughter was able to minister to her really well, sweetly, and I could hardly even talk to her because it was so hard to know the woman that I knew so many years ago that I couldn't keep up with walking, and then look at the shell of a person sitting there, and then you get in the car and you go, what are you doing, God? Why are you letting her go through all this? And so when she finally passed, like I was happy because she would have been embarrassed of the woman she became.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy for her that she's no longer suffering. I'm happy for her that she's with the Lord. I'm sad. You see, though? So I think there actually can be happiness in grief, right? Relief in that. I bet at some awkward way, I don't know for sure, but your dad suffered a tremendous amount.
Yeah, he did.
Was there any part of you that felt a relief? I don't know if you call it happy, but...
One of the mistakes I made when my dad got diagnosed is the day he got diagnosed, I got on Google. And you know I am great at researching, and it was horrible. And so I'm also the oldest, so I'm protecting everyone. And so what I found out, I didn't tell anyone. But I'm like, oh my goodness, all the possibilities of what can happen with this type of cancer.
Yeah.
And so as he was sick and it was going and going and going, when he finally died, there was happiness in, he didn't experience a lot of the things that I thought because we already knew he was going to pass. But with him still being alive, I didn't know how long is this going to go? What other symptoms is he going to experience? Is that unknown? So yeah, that kind of said, wow, it wasn't as bad. I mean, it was bad, but I knew it could have been a lot worse.
And so happy is an odd word, but in some sense you were happy that it could have been worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. I love that.
I understand the grief is seeing stages of life, but one thing that makes me so grateful is that my children are healthy and able to experience life's new experiences. I know a lot of moms are experiencing the kindergarten or the college. One of my mentors, when her son either got married or went to college, I was like, aren't you sad? And this is going to sound optimistic. I know you're a cynic.
You're always
but
optimistic.
She
yeah,
helped
great,
me.
I'm sure.
She helped me because she was like, no, sad is he's not moving on to the next stage. Sad is he's living in the basement, living off of me. Sad is he's shacking up with his girlfriend. Like, this is the way life is supposed to go. I'm happy.
But she's
I'm
mourning.
sure she was mourning, but I liked, as an older woman, and maybe later when I go through that stage, she'll talk to me differently and minister to me differently. But I like the model of, wow, like, there is joy. Only because a lot of women walk around all sad. Like,
well, you're my friend.
I need to see people saying, no, there is joy in this season. I need to hear that.
You're my friend. You're going to be a hot mess.
When I say at least.
When your oldest son goes to college, you're not going to be like, I'm so happy it's good. This is good.
He's growing.
Like, oh, baby, stay home.
You know, like, it's...
That's okay. I'm just saying it. You're not going to be that person.
I'll share it on my Facebook page later, but there's a meme that helped me that said the success of parenting is usually the source of, like, part of the grief. The success is you want them to be independent. You want them to grow. You want them to, go on. Whatever, Brian. That's my optimism.
It's true, though, isn't it? I mean, my mom was staying with you on that. She really struggled in the grief of my brother and I moving on to college.
But isn't that crazy? That means she succeeded. You guys are independent. You went off. That's the whole point of parenting.
Yeah, well, but here's the bad news from a cynic. In the Christian life, we're not promised to be relieved from tension.
Yeah.
We're called to justice and mercy.
Yeah.
Joy and mourning. I mean, it's going to have tension.
Look at this lovely impression, Brian. I don't know what she...
of you, when I was like, oh!
Look at this, the irony of a wedding.
Yeah.
Talk about, like, happy grief.
Nobody wants to say that, but it's true, isn't it?
Oh, my gosh. You should have seen my brother, Edwin. He was sobbing. Len told all my boys, y'all better not do that at your sister's wedding. Sobbing and hugged him. Was like, take care of my sister. Like,
He
stop
loves
it.
you.
That was crazy. Len says, come on, dude. Like, you know.
Wow, Len. Len needs some empathy. That's sweet that your brother was so sad.
Sobbing. It's crazy.
Because you're like, he was your guy.
No, yeah, that's
And
my
Len
dude. Yeah.
and Len was taking him.
Yeah. Joy, who actually is a friend of the ministry and has experienced the season, says you raise them to launch them. It's just the whole point of parenting.
I'm still going back to Sheila's comment, how great my impression of you was. It really, I think it was like you.
Do
People
it one
were
more
like,
time for them.
wow, are there two Janelles there? Oh,
God. Oh, wow. Okay.
You'll be sad, but you won't ugly cry in public at least.
No.
So many great comments here, and again, we give the Lord all the glory for today's show. If you're just joining us, goodness sakes, we did not plan on Chad Allen joining us. We didn't know Laura Story was here to talk about grief. That was something that we just had to do, and I'm glad we did. And and so many of you blessed us. I learned a lot about grief today. Hope you did too.
I did too.
And God gets the glory every day, but particularly today.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Thank you to Kelly again for standing there holding the phone for that long. Say hello to her, or say like "Way to go, Kelly" or something.
Avocado.
And so Mike says Len is a cowboy.
He is a cowboy. That dude is like.
Quit your whining, partner.
Yeah. Watch him when Nia leaves. Yeah, right.
Oh, he's gonna be a baby.
He's a mess with Nia. He'll do stuff. She'll ask him for stuff, and then he'll do it. And I'll be like, Len. Any other time, he's like, it's just the way she asks.
He's gonna grieve when she goes.
A mess.
All right, family, and look at they're cheering for you, Kelly.
Oh, you guys are the best.
You should turn so everybody can say hi to you. Turn the camera on or something. I know you don't like we don't want a close up or something.
It'll be a close up.
Hey,
hi guys.
cool.
Thanks.
All right, we out. We'll see you. Download the podcast. We'll see you on Monday.
Have a good weekend.